I'll never forget the day my life started to spiral out of control. I was sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and collection notices, feeling like I was drowning in a sea of debt. My name is John, and I'm a 35-year-old husband and father of two. My family and I had just moved to a new city for my job, which promised a higher salary and better benefits. But what we didn't realize was that the cost of living in this new city was much higher than we anticipated. At first, everything seemed fine. I was making good money, and we were able to afford a nice home and a comfortable lifestyle. But as time went on, I started to notice that our expenses were adding up quickly. My wife, Sarah, and I were both working hard, but we were barely making ends meet. We had to put everything on credit cards, groceries, rent, utilities, you name it. And before we knew it, our debt started to accumulate at an alarming rate. I remember the first time I saw our credit card statement and felt a knot in my stomach. We owed over $10,000, and the interest rates were astronomical. I tried to brush it off, thinking that we could just pay it off eventually. But as the months went by, our debt continued to grow. We took out loans to consolidate our debt, but that only led to more interest and fees. It was like we were trapped in a never-ending cycle of debt. My family and I were living paycheck to paycheck, and the stress was starting to take a toll on our relationships. We would argue about money all the time, and I could see the worry in Sarah's eyes every time we talked about our finances. I felt like I was failing as a provider, and the weight of our debt was crushing me. I started to wonder how we were going to get out of this mess, and if we would ever be able to escape the debt spiral that was suffocating us. As the debt continued to pile up, I started to notice the first signs of financial distress. We were getting calls from collection agencies, and our credit scores were plummeting. I felt like I was losing control, and I didn't know how to stop it. I was working long hours, but it seemed like no matter how much I earned, we were still falling behind. And then the unthinkable happened. We received a notice from one of our creditors stating that we owed over $200,000. I felt like my world had come crashing down around me. How did my life begin to unravel as debt took over? I'll never forget the day I decided to seek help for my debt. It was a chilly winter morning, and I was sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and collection notices. The weight of my $200,000 debt was crushing me, and I knew I needed guidance. That's when I made the decision to visit an advice center, a place I had heard offered free debt counseling. As I walked in, I was greeted by a friendly financial advisor, who introduced herself as Sarah. Her warm smile and reassuring demeanor put me at ease, and I felt comfortable opening up to her about my financial struggles. Sarah listened attentively as I shared my story, her expression a mix of concern and understanding. She asked me questions about my income, expenses, and debt, taking notes and nodding along as I spoke. When I finished, she took a deep breath and began to explain the reality of my situation. My credit score was severely damaged, and my debt-to-income ratio was unsustainable. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me as she presented the facts, but Sarah reassured me that we could work together to find a solution. We started discussing initial steps towards debt management, including creating a budget, prioritizing expenses, and communicating with my creditors. Sarah introduced me to the concept of debt relief programs, which I had never considered before. She explained that these programs could help me negotiate with my creditors, reduce my debt, and create a more manageable payment plan. I was skeptical at first, but Sarah's expertise and confidence in the process put me at ease. As we explored my options, Sarah presented me with a few different scenarios. We could try debt consolidation, where I would combine all my debts into a single loan with a lower interest rate. Or we could look into debt settlement, where we would negotiate with my creditors to reduce the amount I owed. She also mentioned credit counseling, which would provide me with a personalized plan to manage my debt and improve my credit score. I was overwhelmed by the choices, but Sarah reassured me that we would work together to determine the best course of action. I left the advice center that day feeling a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in months. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, a chance to erase my debt and start fresh. But I knew that the road ahead would be long and challenging, and I was eager to learn more about the options Sarah had presented. What options did the financial advisor present, and how would they impact my life? I'll never forget the feeling of being $200,000 in debt. It's a weight that's hard to put into words. After meeting with the financial advisor, I started to explore the different debt relief options available to me. The first option we discussed was debt consolidation. Essentially, this involves taking out a new loan to pay off all my existing debts, leaving me with just one monthly payment to worry about. The idea sounded appealing, as it would simplify my finances and potentially save me money on interest. As I delved deeper into debt consolidation, I learned about the different types of loans I could use to consolidate my debt. There were personal loans, balance transfer credit cards, and even home equity loans. Each option had its pros and cons, and it was overwhelming to try to decide which one was right for me. The financial advisor warned me that debt consolidation isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, and that I needed to carefully consider my financial situation before making a decision. Next, we talked about bankruptcy. I have to admit, the thought of declaring bankruptcy was daunting. I had heard horror stories about how it can ruin your credit score and stay on your record for years. But the financial advisor explained that there are different types of bankruptcy, such as Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, and that each has its own implications. Chapter 7 bankruptcy, for example, involves liquidating my assets to pay off my debts, while Chapter 13 bankruptcy would allow me to create a repayment plan. The financial advisor made it clear that bankruptcy should be a last resort, as it can have long-term consequences on my financial health. Lastly, we discussed debt settlement. This involves working with a debt settlement company to negotiate with my creditors and reduce the amount I owe. The idea of paying less than what I owed was tempting, but the financial advisor warned me that debt settlement can be risky. There are many debt settlement companies out there that take advantage of people in financial distress, and I needed to be careful not to get scammed. Additionally, debt settlement can negatively affect my credit score, as it involves missing payments and negotiating with creditors. Now I'm faced with a tough decision. Which debt relief option should I pursue? Each option has its potential risks and benefits, and I need to carefully consider my financial situation and goals. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm determined to find a way out of this debt and start fresh. The question is, which path will I choose? I'll never forget the day I decided to take control of my finances and start my journey to financial recovery. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and for the first time in years I felt a sense of hope. I had chosen a debt relief path, and now it was time to put it into action. The first few weeks were tough, to be honest. I had to completely overhaul my budget and start tracking every single penny I spent. It was painstaking, but I knew it was necessary. I started attending support group meetings, where I met others who were going through similar struggles. It was incredible to see how many people were in the same boat as me, and it was comforting to know that I wasn't alone. The support group meetings became my lifeline. I looked forward to them every week, where I could share my struggles and hear about others' successes. The members were all so supportive and encouraging, and they offered valuable advice and tips on how to stay on track. I learned so much from them, from how to create a budget that actually worked, to how to save money on everyday expenses. I even started to adopt a more frugal lifestyle, which was harder than I thought it would be, but it was worth it in the end. Of course, there were still challenges. There were times when I felt like giving up, when it seemed like the debt was never going to go away. But the support group members were always there to remind me of my goals and why I was doing this. They reminded me that financial recovery is a marathon, not a sprint, and that every small step I took was a step in the right direction. And then something amazing happened. I started to see the first signs of progress. My debt began to decrease slowly but surely. I was able to save a little bit of money each month, and I even started to build up an emergency fund. It was an incredible feeling, knowing that I was finally on the right path. I remember one of the support group members, Sarah, telling me that the key to financial recovery is to focus on the progress, not the debt. She said that as long as I was moving forward, no matter how slowly, I was doing something right. Her words stuck with me, and I started to focus on the small victories, rather than the overwhelming debt. As I look back, I realized that the road to financial recovery was not just about the money. It was about the people I met, the lessons I learned, and the person I became. It was about finding a support system that helped me stay motivated, even when things got tough. And it was about discovering that I was capable of so much more than I ever thought possible. But the question is, how did I stay motivated through the challenges, and what support systems played a crucial role in my recovery? I'll never forget the feeling of being $200,000 in debt. It was like a weight was crushing me, making it hard to breathe. But I was determined to overcome it, to erase it all and start fresh. As I progressed in my financial recovery, I faced some significant setbacks that threatened to derail my progress. One of the biggest challenges I faced was unexpected expenses. My car broke down and I had to shell out $2,000 for repairs. Then, my roof started leaking, and I had to pay $3,000 to fix it. These expenses were like punches to the gut, leaving me feeling winded and unsure of how to recover. But I had learned about the importance of emergency funds, so I had some money set aside for just such an occasion. I used my emergency fund to cover the repairs, and it was a huge relief. I didn't have to go further into debt, and I could focus on getting back on track. But the setbacks didn't stop there. I had a temporary setback in my debt repayment plan when I lost my job due to company-wide layoffs. I had been paying $5,000 a month towards my debt, but suddenly I had no income. It was a difficult time, but I didn't give up. I used my financial flexibility to adjust my budget and prioritize my expenses. I cut back on non-essential spending and focused on making the minimum payments on my debt. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than falling behind and accruing more interest. As I navigated these setbacks, I had to reevaluate my financial goals. I realized that I had been too aggressive in my debt repayment plan, and I needed to adjust it to be more realistic. I took a step back and reassessed my budget, making sure I had enough money set aside for emergencies and unexpected expenses. It wasn't easy, but I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of being flexible and adaptable when it comes to finances. I learned that setbacks are a natural part of the journey, and it's how you respond to them that matters. I made adjustments to my financial plan, and I continued to move forward, determined to erase my debt and start fresh. As I look back on that difficult time, I realized that those setbacks were a blessing in disguise. They taught me the importance of having an emergency fund, being flexible with my finances, and adjusting my goals as needed. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned, and I'm excited to see how I can apply them to my future financial endeavors. But for now, I'm just taking it one step at a time, focusing on making progress and overcoming any obstacles that come my way. I still remember the day I hit rock bottom, $200,000 in debt, and feeling like I'd never escaped the overwhelming weight of my financial responsibilities. But as I navigated through the challenges and setbacks, I began to notice a shift within myself. It was as if I had reached a critical turning point in my financial journey, a moment where everything began to change. I had just achieved a significant debt milestone, paying off a substantial chunk of my credit card debt. It was a huge relief, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally see a light at the end of the tunnel. This achievement sparked a change in my financial behavior and mindset. I started to become more mindful of my spending habits, cutting back on unnecessary expenses, and creating a budget that actually worked for me. Around this time, I met a mentor figure who would become instrumental in my financial transformation. He was a seasoned investor with a passion for teaching others about financial literacy. He invited me to attend a seminar on financial literacy, where I learned about the importance of investing, retirement planning, and financial independence. It was like a whole new world had opened up to me, and I was eager to soak up as much knowledge as possible. The seminar was held in a large conference room, filled with people from all walks of life, all seeking to improve their financial situation. The presenter was engaging and knowledgeable, sharing real-life examples and strategies for achieving financial freedom. I took meticulous notes, asking questions and seeking clarification on concepts that were new to me. As I delved deeper into the world of personal finance, I began to explore new financial opportunities. I started reading books and articles on investing, learning about the different types of investments, and how to create a diversified portfolio. I even started a small retirement account, contributing a portion of my income each month. It was a small step, but it felt like a giant leap towards securing my financial future. My mentor figure became a trusted guide, offering valuable advice and guidance as I navigated this new terrain. He introduced me to the concept of financial independence, showing me how to create a plan that would allow me to live life on my own terms. It was a daunting task, but with his support and encouragement, I felt like I could finally achieve my financial goals. As I looked to the future, I began to consider new opportunities and investments that would align with my long-term financial strategy. I thought about starting a small business, or investing in real estate. The possibilities seemed endless, and I was excited to explore them. But for now, I was content to take things one step at a time, building a strong foundation and creating a plan that would serve me well for years to come. I still remember the rush of adrenaline and the sense of determination that coursed through my veins as I embarked on the final push to eradicate my debt. With the end of my debt repayment journey in sight, I felt an overwhelming urge to intensify my efforts and make a last-ditch attempt to become debt-free. I had come so far, and the thought of being just a stone's throw away from financial freedom was all the motivation I needed to propel myself forward. As I sat down to review and adjust my financial plan, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had been using a combination of the debt snowball method and the debt avalanche method, and it had been working wonders for me. The debt snowball method had allowed me to quickly eliminate some of my smaller debts, giving me a much-needed boost of confidence and momentum. On the other hand, the debt avalanche method had helped me to tackle my larger debts, saving me a significant amount of money in interest payments over time. With my financial plan in place, I began to make preparations for a debt-free life. I started to think about all the things I could do with my money once I was no longer burdened by debt. I could travel, invest in my future, and even start saving for a down payment on a house. The possibilities seemed endless, and I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation as I thought about the freedom and flexibility that lay ahead. As I approached the completion of my debt repayment journey, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. I thought about the struggles, the setbacks, and the sacrifices I had made along the way. But most of all, I thought about the sense of pride and accomplishment that I felt, knowing that I had taken control of my finances and had worked tirelessly to create a better future for myself. I felt a sense of hope and optimism, knowing that I was on the cusp of a new chapter in my life, one that was filled with promise and possibility. And as I stood on the threshold of this new chapter, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held and how my life would change once I was finally debt-free. I still remember the day I received the letter from the debt collector, stating that I had finally paid off the last of my $200,000 debt. It was a surreal moment, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I could breathe again, like I had been given a second chance at life. I looked around my small apartment, cluttered with memories of the struggles I had faced, and felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had done it. I had actually done it. As I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment, I couldn't help but think about all the lessons I had learned along the way. I had learned about the importance of budgeting, of living below my means, and of investing in myself. I had learned about the dangers of credit card debt and the importance of saving for the future. But most importantly, I had learned about the power of perseverance and the importance of never giving up on my goals. I thought back to the days when I had felt like I was drowning in debt, when it seemed like there was no way out. I had felt like I was stuck in a never-ending cycle of payments and interest, with no escape. But I had refused to give up. I had kept pushing forward, always looking for ways to pay off my debt faster, to save more money, and to build a better future for myself. And now, as I looked to the future, I felt a sense of excitement and possibility. I knew that I had the power to create the life I wanted, to build wealth and leave a legacy that would outlast me. I thought about all the things I wanted to achieve, all the goals I wanted to reach. I wanted to invest in real estate, to start my own business, and to give back to my community. I wanted to use my experience to help others, to teach them about the importance of financial literacy and the power of wealth building. As I stood there, holding the letter from the debt collector, I felt a sense of gratitude and appreciation. I was grateful for the journey, for the struggles and the successes. I was grateful for the lessons I had learned and for the person I had become. And I was excited for the future, for the possibilities and opportunities that lay ahead. I knew that I would always carry the lessons of my debt journey with me, and that I would use them to build a brighter, more secure future for myself and those I loved. I hope that my story can serve as an inspiration to others, a reminder that financial freedom is possible, no matter how daunting the task may seem. It takes hard work, dedication, and perseverance, but the rewards are well worth it. So to anyone who is struggling with debt, I would say this: don't give up. Keep pushing forward, always looking for ways to pay off your debt faster, to save more money, and to build a better future for yourself. You got this. You are capable of achieving financial freedom and living the life you deserve.